Hi there, I'm Laura Rainwater. I'm one of the pastors at Parker United Methodist Church. And today I just wanted to keep talking about and thinking about the movie Finding Nemo. This past Sunday, Pastor Cody told us and shared with us some of the truths that are in Finding Nemo. But what was most fun is when she started singing, "Just keep swimming, just keep swimming." And if you're in worship, you probably had that same experience. But I especially ask you to watch that video again, watch her sermon again, because it's not just about the singing, but it's about the message that she brought to us on that day. But I started reflecting myself about that, just keep swimming. When is it we need to remember to just keep swimming? When is it we need somebody to help us think? We need to get going. We need to keep moving forward. Usually it's during difficult times. Perhaps it's during times when we don't know what to think or we don't know what to say. And we just have to take that first step in faith to get back, to get going, to get moving. Just keep swimming is an important message, I think, for all of us. But yet there's something else that captured my attention when thinking about Finding Nemo. You see, Dory, the blue tang fish, sang this song to her friend Marlin, who was the clownfish father of Nemo. You see, Marlin had a very difficult time in his life. He was in a difficult spot. It had happened years before. The story, the Finding Nemo movie, starts in a very dark place. It starts with Marlin and Coral, two clownfish who are awaiting the arrival of their babies. There are over 400 eggs just waiting to be hatched, and they are having a conversation and imagining what's going to be like to be parents. But then the worst thing happens. A barracuda comes in, and one thing after another. Coral is gone, and the eggs are gone, well, all except one. All Marlin has left of this dream that he had was one egg, lost the love of his life, lost a bit of the future. This one egg, of course, is his son Nemo. And so it's no surprise that Marlin is very protective of Nemo. It's his only son, the only son he'll ever have. And so he does what parents often do. They're a little overprotective. Of course, the movie shows from Nemo's perspective, maybe dad is a little too protective because Nemo, like all kids, like all teens, are ready to become independent, ready to go out into the world and to have a little more fun, to do something maybe their parents weren't quite ready for them to do. And that speaks to me now, having a daughter who is a little over 15, who is on the verge of driving, on the verge of whatever will happen when it comes to college time in a few years. I'm not trying to push it that way, but that goes through my mind. And maybe this idea of overprotectiveness was really speaking to me because last week was the first week of school for our little blessings, preschool and kindergarten. I have to remember that name. And so we have lots of kids and lots of parents that were being dropped off or dropping their kids off at the school for the first time, some for the first time since summer was over. And of course, we all remember those moments if we're parents, or we can all imagine the challenges it comes from the beginning of school. Sometimes the kids aren't excited about it. Sometimes they cry for their parents, and after a few weeks, they get into the routine. And of course, sometimes it's the parents crying for their kids, wishing that they could keep them little, wishing that they could always have them in those small protective cocoons of taking care of them the best they can. But the truth is that, kids grow up. Kids want to assert their independence. They want to keep going. They want to start swimming. They want to go to the edge even when their parents tell them not to. It's kind of the challenge of growing up, isn't it? I know I was brought up by parents that instilled in us that we would grow up to be independent. And I remember my mom once saying, I want you girls to be independent, but sometimes you're just a little too independent, especially when you move many states away. So there's challenges. It's what happens when we grow up. And Marlin has to handle that as he watches his son Nemo go off to school on the first day of school, as he gets on the ray. You have to watch the movie to see what a school looks like under the sea. But of course, Marlin wanted to protect his son, wasn't sure he should send him to school. And then the worst thing happens. Nemo takes a little too big of a step into independence, and he swims away from the class. He's captured by a scuba diver, and the next thing we know, he is gone. And Marlin, his worst fears realized, has to figure out how to find his son in the great big ocean world. But what we discover in the movie is that Marlin doesn't have to find Nemo all on his own. He has somebody with him. He has Dory. Just keep swimming. He has the sea turtles. He has the pelican. He has others that are helping him to reunite with Nemo. And if you've seen the movie, and if you haven't seen the movie, you know how it ends. They're going to be reunited at the end. And it's a good thing. But what's especially important is by the end, not only have Marlin and Nemo been reunited, but Nemo has matured. And Marlin has realized that the fears that were holding him back from trusting in Nemo, or the fears and the grief that were keeping him from letting go of the tight rein or the tight embrace that he had over his son, he had to let go. It was time to let his son live his own life. And that's not always easy. It's not always easy for parents on the first day of school. And it's not always easy as we have to parent our children as they get older. It reminds me of a story in Scripture in Luke chapter 15. Jesus tells 3 stories. The first one is about the lost coin, then the lost sheep. Maybe it's the other way around. But then the third story is about the lost son. We call it the story of the prodigal son. You see, the prodigal son was the youngest son of 2. And the father was a good father. The sons were good sons until the youngest decided he wanted to be independent and he wanted to go off on his own. And so he asked his father to give him his inheritance before it's time. And then he takes his inheritance and he walks out the door and he goes off to live his life his own way. And of course, it goes the way we would expect. Jesus says that the young man did what he wanted, which meant he spent all his money way too soon. He got in trouble. He found himself at the bottom of a pit of despair that he never thought he would be in. He was hungry. He had no friends, no family. And then it finally came to him, I need to return home. And as he returned home, he just begged his father, I don't deserve to be your son, but please at least treat me like the way you treat your servants. At least I would have food. At least I would have a place to sleep. And we're supposed to be surprised when the father says, I welcome you back, son. The father opens his arms. The father throws a party and says, the one that was once lost is now found, and this is a reason to celebrate. It's a story to remind us that there are times when we go our own way. There are times when we turn our backs on our fate. There are times that we turn our backs on God. There are times when we turn our backs on all the right things and the good things in life because we want to do what we want. Or maybe we feel like we've been kicked out of the cocoon and we are left to fend for ourselves and we wonder, where is God in these moments? And we just find ourselves so far away and we wonder, can I go back? Would God even love me? Would God even forgive me for all the things I've done? Jesus tells us, yes. God's love is unconditional. God's love is extravagant. God's love is so amazing. We cannot even imagine all the bad things that son did, but yet the Father welcomed him back. The Father rejoiced when he returned. Maybe you wonder if you are too far gone. Maybe you wonder if you have taken too far of a step. Will God love you? Will we love you? And I'm here to say yes. You are lovable. You are worthy. And you mean the world to us. You mean the world to God. So much that God sent Jesus to us. So much that Jesus offered himself up for us. And that is good news for all of us when we feel like we are too far gone. But there's another son in this story. The oldest son, he didn't leave. He didn't walk out the door with his inheritance and turn his back on his dad. Instead, he did what some of us might have done, which is to forget that their father loves them, to forget that they are beloved. So busy doing all the right things, so busy trying to keep all the right rules or check all the right boxes that we forget that God's love is not about achieving. God's love is not about following certain rules, but God's love is about God's love for us. We don't have to do anything to earn it. We don't have to do anything to deserve it. Maybe we haven't gone metaphorically too far away, but yet our spirits, our hearts have forgotten that we too need God's embrace. Maybe you feel that as well. Maybe you go to church every Sunday. Maybe you do everything, but there's just something missing and you wonder, God, have I failed? I'm doing all the right things, but it just doesn't feel right. And Jesus is here to say, you are loved too. What the oldest son didn't do was embrace the forgiveness, embrace the love that has always been there. I invite us as we keep swimming through the challenges of life to know that we are worthy of God's love. If you feel like you need to talk about this, if you still have questions or doubts, please speak with us. Contact Cody, contact me. We would love to help you look at Scripture, help you pray it out. Or maybe you can be like Dory. Maybe you can be like the sea turtles and the pelicans, that you see somebody around who is struggling and you can remind them that they are loved. We at the church, we don't always do things right. Sometimes we make mistakes. We as followers of Jesus sometimes make mistakes. But yet, when we recenter ourselves, when we focus again on who we are, which is God's beloved children, and who we are called to be, which is to love one another, then we're reminded, and then we have a different call to swim, but also to grow in our faith. This coming Sunday, we're going to talk about the movie Brave, and we're going to talk about unconditional love in relationships and families. And I invite you to join us this coming Sunday at 9:30. Until then, have a great week, friends. Bye-bye.